Okay, so we're going to talk about hands now. Now, I've got a bit of reference up here just to kind of help me in explaining certain things, but you are your best reference for this. You got hands. We've all got hands. We can literally hold it up in front of ourselves and look at it. We've got people around us. We've got you can get your phone and literally have a photogrammetry app which is free. Scan your hand. You'll have a 3D representation of your own hand to look at and use as reference. There's a few things that I really want us to think about when it comes to hands with a pen. There's my pen. And that's shapes and stuff. So, woo, spin you around. There you go. Move you over there. So, hands, when we think of them very stylistically, hands are essentially just hello. Apparently, we're not drawing. So apparently my drawing friend isn't going to draw with a stylus at the minute, even though I just used it like a minute ago. Anyway, I want hands. So I think we all think about hands stylistically as just basically a rectangle, a cylinder coming out the bottom for your arm, your thumb, and then your fingers, which is fine. That is technically what's happening, but really, what we really need to be thinking about is the actual shapes. Actually, no, I'll bring them back. Is the actual shapes of what's happening. So if we draw an actual realistic hand, or I'll try and draw a realistic hand, and I drew this in the middle of the screen, didn't I? What a fool. Oh, I hate Photoshop. No, I don't hate Photoshop at all. There we go. Right, so if I'm drawing a more realistic hand, what I'm thinking about is curves and angles, and I'm just going to do it from the top in the first drawing, then I'm going to draw it from the front. So, from the top, curves. Curves are one of the biggest things about hands. So right here, this is our knuckles. So we've got our knuckles here that come down to a tendon here. The highest point is our middle knuckle. I'm trying to rotate around like an iPad and I'm just failing. We got that curve right there. Very, very important that we get that curve in there. There you go. And then our thumb. So our thumb, if this is our middle finger, middle, our thumb doesn't come out as a right angle like that. That's a stress position to do that. There we go. So the stress position. Our thumb, if we shake our hands out and let it rest, our thumb kind of comes out in like multiple 45-degree angles. So from the front, it kind of comes out at kind of 45 degrees. From that way, it kind of comes down at 45 degrees. And from sideways, see if I can do this. From sideways, it's kind of pointing forwards in 45 degrees. So from this angle, we will have a little bit of a lump for where that thumb comes out of, but you're looking much more like that kind of angle. Flat of the palm. Obviously got your ulnar or your wrist bone right there. And your fingers, I'm going to try and draw a finger here. Try and think of your fingers as, well, what they are. Sections of bone. Try and think of your fingers like that. Try and think of less of them like that. More like, these kind of shapes. Your phalanges is what they're called. You can tell I don't draw enough. Ooh. And they don't go out in a straight line like that. They kind of splay out a little bit. And you do have, again, from the sides, you do have a kind of a natural kind of droop to them, drop to them. So remember, from here, you've got that curve, and as well, that curve is also, recognized within the fingertips. The middle finger being the tallest one, the left and the pointer and the pinky, and the ring finger being two lower ones, and then your pinky being even lower. Now, this changes from person to person. Everyone's kind of like really pay attention to what finger's the highest, because some people the pointer finger is higher than the ring finger. For me, it's the opposite around, and my ring finger's higher than my pointer finger. and where your little finger is, the height of your little finger is also different. Also, we're going to look at this from the side now. If we were to draw our finger from the side, there's also a change in length between your fingers. So if I just draw my palm first, this is my knuckles. First of all, what I want to do is remember that knuckle side down to palm side, there is a slope, there is an angle there. You've got webbing on the inside of your fingers there, so that needs to be put in there. Your finger is shorter, technically shorter at the palm side than it is knuckle side. And then again, you get that thumb mask there. You know, you would probably see some kind of, because of the way our hands are nice and relaxed, you might see a little bit of the offside palm pad. Yeah, your thumb kind of comes out this kind of shape. And then obviously your fingers like that. And obviously depending on which finger it is, depending on what the angle is. Now here there isn't really much of an arc, but the thing I do want us to watch out for is where our hands connect to our arms. Please just don't do right across like that, because it means that your hands are really, really, really thin, and it means it just looks wrong. If you really look at arms, you get a little bit of a raise here as your hand connects to your wrist, connects to your arm. There's a little bit of a raise right here. And at the bottom, that's kind of mimicked. So I like to sketch, if I'm drawing this in, I like just to overlap my thumb up a little bit like that, and then start to bring out my wrist, raise up for that section. That's a lot more natural. A lot more natural. And on the opposite side as well, you will have your ulnar bone coming across like that. So hopefully that makes sense. And the last one is when we're looking at like down the barrel. Now it's going to be a bit tricky to draw, but like that. So middle finger, index, pointer, pinky, curve. You get that curve shape. And then you get your thumb coming out at that 45-degree angle like that. A little bit of that fat pad at the opposite side as well, depending on how big your hands are. Really, really pay attention to that. And there's obviously, if you look carefully, you have got dips in your knuckles. So your knuckle is there, and then there's a bit of a dip, knuckle there, bit of a dip, knuckle there, and knuckle there. So that's some of the stuff we have to just think about when we're doing hands, and it's all just about curves. So when we're actually doing the hands, I'm going to make one actually on the body. We've been making them in isolation, and I do recommend making them in isolation just flat. You know, pointing up, pointing down, whatever you want, just to get used to it. But I'm going to make it on the actual hand, on the actual body here. I'm going to have a very similar approach as, you know, to stuff I've been doing all the time so far. I'm going to make it as a separate mesh, and then combine bits together that need to be combined, and then fix the shapes, and then combine and fix shapes, all that kind of jazz. Now, the size of the hand is a very important one. The size of the hand is from the bottom of the palm to top of the middle finger. It's essentially the length of the faceplate, so where your forehead ends, or begins, I should say, and down to your chin. It's about that length. Obviously, we've not got a face here, so I'm going to rough it in a little bit. I'm going to guesstimate it, but I like that clavicle I've got. But yeah, so let's bring in a sphere. I'm just going to bring in a sphere. Going to bring it into place. And at first I'm going to make it flat, and then I'm going to angle it to the hand when I'm ready. But all I'm going to do is just start to, you know, get my hand shape in there. How I get it in there, it's up to me. I'm always just checking the size. So because I've not got a face in here, I've got to be a little bit more careful. So like that. I might as well start to Dynamesh this at 32. Really low poly. Yeah, look at that. So I want to get that curve in there. So that's the general curve that I want from the front. Like that. Okay, my thumb's going to come out about here. So what I'm going to do is use that move brush. Actually, not going to use the move brush. I'm going to use the snake hook tool. So snake hook is a really fun tool. BSH. Snake hook. It will say this, best perform with Sculptris Pro. I'm not going to use that for this. But what a snake hook is basically like a smear brush. You know, if you see the difference, this is a move brush. This is snake hook. So you can see the difference. So what I'm going to do is actually make my thumb pad using that. Oh, my thumb pad, sorry, my thumb. But get my curve in there first of all. So let's just get that curve in there. I think I've got too much of a curve in there, so it's not that curvy. So I'm just going to flan off a little bit, but I still like, that's my middle finger, little finger, pointer finger, index finger. That's where my fat pad's going to be for my thumb. Let's get a material which is not black underneath. I might just clear that. There we go. Some's going to come out of there. That's where my fat pads are going to be. I'm just using move brush at the time, for the time being. You know, boom. Awesome. So I've got kind of like a bit of a mitten shape. And then if I use that snake hook, I can literally just go. I do have to be the correct angle for this, so I'm going to look at it like this. I'm just going to go. Whoop. Look at that. Almost perfect. So what I'm doing is I'm looking basically from the front of my subject, and I'm basically dragging out sideways. You don't have to do it like that. You know, you could use a separate mesh. I like using snake hook just because it's a bit, you know, it's a bit dirty. It's a bit kind of like, it's like the way I like modeling. It's a bit messy. Gets me to a point really fast. Dynamesh that. There we go. Just going to get that kind of angle in there as well for the, you know, for the knuckles to palm side, that kind of slope. So I'm just going to use the trim dynamic and just push that back like that. That's better. Cool. So that's my palm done. It's very good. So I could, if I want to, just pivot, position that back there. Just gonna get my hand kind of like that. This is the right kind of size. It might seem a little bit small at the minute, but that's because obviously I've not got my fingers in there. So bring it back like that. Right, let's bring my fingers in. How do I want to bring my fingers in? Well, I can bring them in as Z-spheres. So let's just, I'm not going to do it all the way, but I'm going to just show you how we could bring it in as a Z-sphere. So my Z-sphere is in the middle of the world there. Now, luckily, I don't have to use symmetry on this because hands are asymmetrical. What I'm going to do is scale it down, put it in the middle of the hand. Doesn't matter if it's poking out a little bit. We can always, you know, when it's actual geometry, we can smooth it back. But just get it in the middle. And then I'm just going to draw out, put transparency on. I'm just going to draw out my fingers. So I'm going to draw out 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to drag those to make sure my brush is really small when I'm dealing with Z-spheres. So I'm going to drag those out to, that's my little finger. That's my index finger. That's my middle finger. That's my pointer finger. Of course, you could do this to do, you could do the exact same trick to do your thumb. So let's give it there. So now I'm going to turn off transparency because I want to see where that flat part of the geometry I've just put in there is. About there. So let's jump up to about there. Bring it there. Bring you that there. I think possibly the bottom of my palm is a little bit fat at the minute, but I'm not really bothered. And then I'm just going to scale these up so they're finger sized, roughly. Like that. And then to actually make the ends of the fingers dead easy. Now I want you to remember when we were doing 3D modeling last year, whenever we were making something long, I always said don't bother going like from beginning to the next bit to the next bit to the next bit in extrusions and stuff. Just take it all the way to the end. Make that journey, and then you can fill in your in-betweens. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to make the length of my finger, and then I'm going to put in the points for my knuckles. So I'm going to click and drag out, hold shift to make the finger the same size. Yep, I'm definitely going to need to deal with that in a bit. And my finger is roughly about the length of my palm, my middle finger. So I'm going to do something like that. And then do the same for the others. So drag this out. Like that. Like that. Any scaling issues I can fix in a bit. I'm not really bothered if the scales are off. I think they all need to be scaled up a little bit. I'd rather fingers be a little bit bigger than a little bit than too thin. And then you need to be back. You need to probably come forward actually, looking at it. And I'm also going to get that, you know, if I shake my hand off and you can see the way that my fingers are arranged, and it's nice relaxed, I'm going to get that in there. So like that. And then I can put my knuckles in. So I can put 1, 2. Or in fact, you know what's going to ease and even easier and cool to do is starting off with, like, say, my little finger. Just make sure it's, you know, flat off there. I'm going to put in my knuckles, and then I'm going to rotate from there. So I'm going to say rotate from the base knuckle, then rotate the second knuckle, then rotate the third knuckle. Do the same thing for the next one. So knuckle, knuckle, rotate from the base, from there, from there. Next one, so I'm going to knuckle, knuckle, it's my middle finger. So rotate from there to there to there. Might even just rotate these a bit more. And then go down to my pointer finger. Knuckle, knuckle. Oop. Rotate, rotate. You need to get moved back a little bit. There we go. And the only thing I'm going to do is just bring that little finger in a little bit. Rotate it in. There you go. So I said I wasn't going to take the Z-Sphere hand the whole way. I think I might actually. Because my only other way of doing this is basically doing the same kind of shape, but using individual like blocks for my knuckles. So I make like 1 cylinder for the first knuckle, and I actually make a second. I make only 2 cylinders when I do this. I make 1 cylinder for the first knuckle, and then 1 cylinder for the second and third knuckle for the tip of the finger. So at first I have this really kind of one joint kind of bend, but then later on from a sculpting I'll add the other one in. That's what I do. But I'm having fun with this. Now I'm going to be a little bit cool as well. I think it's cool anyway, because when I press A, it looks like that looks okay. But I want to add a little bit more information, a bit more detail. So what I'm going to do is add a joint in between each knuckle and scale that down. So now you see the difference between, I mean, it's only slight, but you see that we've got a bit of that knuckle information, and that tells me also I need to scale this up a little bit, push it back a little bit so it fits in with the hand a bit more. That's better. And I could probably scale this tip of the finger down a bit, you down a little bit. That's better. So I can do that for each one of the fingers. So yeah, I think I'm going to scale this up a little bit, push it back, and then start to add, add, add. I like having those slightly skeletal fingers because I can see the knuckles and stuff. And of course, this is just the beginning of this whole process. So what I've got here isn't going to be the final mesh at all. So draw, scale it in, scale it in, scale it in. And I'm always scaling down the tip of the finger because the tip of the finger is small. There we go. So if I leave that like it is for the time being, what I can do is adjust the hand around it. So yes, I think that maybe my palm of the hand is a little bit fatty, so I can just get a smooth brush, smooth it down a little bit, or the trim dynamic, or whatever. I can start pulling up some of that knuckle information, and then pulling back some of that kind of not knuckle information, basically in between the knuckles. We're only very low resolutions at the minute anyway, so I should probably lift up my hand to 64. There we go. Now I'm not detailing, I want to stress, I'm not detailing, I'm doing is putting landmarks in there. Sculpting landmarks. Again, almost treating it like the deltoid, where I'm using the knuckles to cap the end of the finger to hold it into place. And then just using whatever tools. So here I'm just using the clay build-up. But remember, I've changed that focal shift so it's softer. It's not got that as much tooth. Get the owner in there. Not positioned this as well. I've just started making the hand. There's a lovely little bit of a triangle here that I like to get in there. You know, you can kind of feel it. It's like right there on the hand. I can feel the knuckle of my pointer finger and the knuckle of my thumb, and right in between it, you've got this lovely little triangle section. Some connective tissue there. Push it back. Again, doing what I can with this resolution. I'm never going to be able to get super tons of information ever, 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 ever. Damn standard. You know, just getting some of that information in. Now, I will always say hands are a bit of a bugger to do. They're one of my weakest skills. I can make some really nice hands. It just takes me a while to do. That's all. Just because there's a lot of information. But the same thinking across everything. You know, you got to be moving around all the time. Don't get yourself locked into one area. Constantly got to be moving around, checking. I'm gonna have that printed on a T-shirt. Checking. Hands are funny as well because there's tons of different plane changes. Surprising amount of plane changes in a hand. Before I even start thinking about tendons and knuckles and any kind of detailing. Tons of plane changes. Then think let's go in there with a nice strong smooth brush, because I can use that trick I was saying for to get knuckles in there. So nice strong smooth brush. I'll keep smoothing off. The only place I'm not smoothing is where the knuckle would be. Really look at this silhouettes of fingers as well. One thing that fingers aren't is round. Fingers are not round. Fingers are more cubey than anything else. You'll be surprised. Ooh. So I'm not quite done with the hand there, but at this point what I might want to do is just start getting it onto the actual hand itself. Like getting it all on kind of mesh, not Dynamesh, just in one sub-tool. So these are still Z-spheres. Let me get my adaptive skin resolution, whenever. Let's set these to 64, and what we'll do in preview, we'll check. So this is why we check. So at 64 resolution, my fingers are webbing to themselves. So what I'm going to do is go to 128, re-preview. Better, but so in this case, I'm going to go up a little bit further, maybe to 180 instead. Maybe 224. Okay, that for me is enough. But they're not going to. I mean, they're slightly webbing in the middle there, but I can deal with that. It's not like when we had them at 64 with the whole thing webbed. So that's just me changing my resolution right there. And for me, I've gone 224. You use your own best judgment. Make adaptive skin. I'm going to delete my fingers here because those are obviously my Z-sphere versions. I'm going to insert my new fingers like that. And I'm going to just merge my hand down onto my fingers. Merge down. Just make sure. Okay, for some reason it's 400 and something there. I don't know why. Is that just really dense? Yeah, whatever. Right. I'm not Dynameshing anyway. And then I'm just going to angle it into some kind of position where it makes sense. Remembering that little bit of a bump in the wrist right there. And then from here I can start bringing in the ulnar bone here. I can start making sense of it going into the arm. I can start looking at again how the way the wrist bone connects to the hand and clamps on. Let me just do a good old mirror weld. I think my hands are a little bit too small. Just going to scale it in. Move them back into place. Yeah, and I still seem feel a bit too big. Okay. Not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, but they're hands of some variety at a state that they're at. Still need a lot of work, but we got something in there. And because I'm also making them on the body, I get a better sense of how big they are, the scale, if I need to adjust anything, all that kind of jazz. Cool. So that's the hands. Relatively simple as a process. What's that? Half an hour. Half an hour to make a hand and explain it and draw it. Not a massively, strenuous process. It's the same thing we've been doing with everything else so far. It's just we're just applying it to a much smaller, more kind of, I won't say visually complex area, but a much more denser, busier area. Because obviously there's quite a lot of things, there's quite a few things that go on inside the wrist, inside the hand that we need to be aware of. Finger position, the curves. Do not forget about the curves, the angles, all them arcs. They're everywhere. Can't forget about them. Half an hour. However you create your hands, it's up to you. I ended up going for that Z-sphere method because I thought, oh, you know what, that's actually it's giving me a good result. The result is not amazing at this stage, anyway. But again, at this stage, all I want us to do is just get the basics in there before we start adding detail. When we come to do detailing, that's when we can start to really look at stuff. Because as soon as we understand the wrinkles of the face and wrinkles of the upper body, wrinkles all over the body make much more sense. So we don't even need to do a hand-on-hand lesson on hand wrinkles or anything like that. Cool. So, nice short one for that one. See you in the next one.